we're going to try a longer video. So, we'll do the long video and then I'll cut it up into a short. Maybe that'll be interesting so you can see the whole plunge. I don't know. I'll talk or something. Let's go. Yeah, I imagine some people don't think I'm actually doing 10 minutes. So, do 10 minutes on live, doing it live. Well, I guess not live. I want to do these live. But I have to get to 50 subscribers first. Christ almighty. Okay. There we go. 10 minutes. Let's do it. Kill me. Oh, okay. Well, I don't know how I'm really going to cut this up into a short, but I figure I'll just show that part. And then, maybe just getting out? I don't know. So what should we talk about? We got 10 minutes. Oh. Very cold. Very cold. Need my body to normalize first before I figure something out. So, been feeling pretty good with the joints. I have a pretty messed up knee. I've torn my meniscus on my left knee, on the left side. Torn my one on the right side while I was in the Army. Guess I'll just talk about being in the Army. It was a good time. I liked that. Joined back in '08. And I think as with most people who join, it was desperation. Because all you ever hear about growing up is like, oh, you don't join the Army or the military really because it's a bunch of criminals. I mean, that's all I ever heard. And that was growing up in Southern California. And it's how my grandfather joined. He wasn't a criminal or anything, but he joined. He was in the Korean War. Pretty sure it was Korean War. Yeah, Korean War. But he was in the Air Force. And so he joined in the LA area. And back in that time, according to him, there was a lot of like, hey, would-be criminals, you can join. It was like low-level criminals, not like, murderers or rapists or anything like that. But low-level criminals. Probably just drug dealers really in that area. And he joined the Air Force with that class of folks. And so when he got to basic training, it was very difficult, very hard on you, even for the Air Force. So I joined out of desperation. I was back in '08 again. If anybody knows the crash and all that. It was a very difficult time to get a job in Southern California, where I was from, which is Victorville, if you don't know where that's at. It's in the middle of the desert, in between LA and Vegas is the best way I can tell people. A lot of people know where Barstow is, which is wild because it's a much smaller town. Victorville, Apple Valley, Hesperia is much bigger. Anyway, so my wife got very sick. We had to go to the hospital, and it cost like $3,000 just for them to put an IV bag in and give her some antibiotics. And she only got as bad as she got because we didn't have health insurance. And I just couldn't find work. I did under the table stuff, construction, plumbing, concrete. I never did roofing. My skin could not handle roofing. I could barely handle concrete. Anyway, I needed something that had health insurance. And so I went ahead and joined. I said, hey, let's do it. And I was like, I'm going to go to war, and then I'm going to go to Iraq, and then I'm going to die. Because it was during the surge, 2008. And I did very well in the ASVAB. I tried to join the Air Force first, and that was a couple years prior. And I was like, oh, Air Force, I'll do what my grandpa did. Couldn't get in because the high school I went to was a Tier 2 school. If you know anything about recruiting, Tier 2 schools just don't get much preference, in particular for the Air Force. In fact, I even think the Marines. Marines and Air Force are more choosy and can be because they're so much smaller. The Navy and the Army They just don't have the luxury of choosing, being more specific with their choices. Although the Navy is a little bit more than the Army, and the Army being the biggest contingent is the least choosy. I wouldn't say they have lower standards, it's just they need to widen them because they need more folks. But you can take that how you will. So joined back, again, '08. I got to be an imagery analyst. I had a bunch of choices for jobs. I did well. I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I did pretty good. And my recruiter, and I was his first recruiter, at least according to him I was, I decided I wanted to be an MP. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do military police, and you're not going to convince me otherwise because all recruiters are liars, and really they're not. They're just out there trying to get a job done. Not saying there aren't some who are skeezy, because they're out there, but I don't think I've ever met a skeezy one. Anyway, again, I chose imagery analyst. In the end, I went to MEPS and changed there. I was like, oh my gosh. And for those who don't know, if you're going to join, when you get to MEPS, your recruiter is going to tell you not to change anything when you get there. Don't do this and don't do that. And again, it was my recruiter's first go, and he was like, when you get there, if you decide you don't want to be an MP, that's okay. Just make sure you join. That's like his only thing. He was like, you're joining, right? Yeah, okay, great. That's, in the end, that's all I really care about. And it's not a big deal to go down there for one thing, and then when you're actually choosing, be like, hey, can I actually see the other stuff? And I did, and I looked at it and went, okay, let's do it. And I had to do a few extra steps because it required a top secret security clearance, as opposed to just a secret for an MP. So I filled out the paperwork, and it was just a little bit more extensive. And then I signed up and I joined, and it was awesome. And 2 weeks later, I was in basic training, hating life. And then I did that 10 weeks. It was in South Carolina. And then I went to Arizona for 6 or 8 months, maybe even 9. I don't remember how long training was. It was very long, for imagery analysis school at Fort Huachuca. And I loved it. I fell into it. I definitely had a more negative attitude as I joined, and like when I was lower enlisted. When I was E1 to E4, I had this very like, the Army's not professional, the Army's not this, and the Army's not that. And having left the Army, it's actually super regimented in comparison to how I felt while I was in. When you're experiencing it, it feels bad. I went to Georgia for my Fort Gordon, Georgia, for my first assignment, and you didn't deploy there, so I went to the one place you just like don't deploy. And I worked in an imagery cell, and we supported special forces guys with doing analysis for stuff. I can't really go into it for the nature of what we were doing, but we supported them, and it was awesome. And I re-enlisted to leave that place because I wanted to see what else the Army had to offer. In retrospect, bad idea. But I didn't like Georgia either, and I didn't really like the East Coast. So I went to as far west as I could get, and I got Fort Lewis in Tacoma, Washington, where it's right next to Tacoma. I think it's more associated with Lakewood, or even, most people are just going to say Seattle because it's the biggest major city. But, I mean, Tacoma's huge. And I was there for 4.5 years, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. I deployed from there. I went to Afghanistan in 2012. Yeah, 2012. And I only went for 6 months. Only half of us deployed for the first 6. And then, oddly enough, my deployment date was April 1st. We honestly didn't think it was a serious date. We went out there, and everything we were handing off to the Afghans to give the country back to them, and they can take control of it. One of the times that we were doing that. So we took over an area that was 3 times the size of an area you would normally get. And all I got to do was eat chicken breast for pretty much every single meal and work out. I gained like 15 pounds in muscle. I was cut. It was awesome. Pay was always good. I don't drink or smoke, so I mean, none of my money went to that. My wife didn't have to work. She found odd jobs here and there. just it was a good time. I mean, you eat a lot of shit. You deal with a lot of bull. But also you get, every holiday off. For the most part. I mean, sometimes your number gets called to do like watch or something, or CQ or staff duty, which you don't. If you've never been in, you're not going to know what that is. But it's a 24-hour detail, and it sucks, and it happens. I always volunteered for the shitty days, like Christmas and things like that, and it was pretty good. I didn't mind doing any of that. Oh, we've come to the 10, well, I got about 10, 15 more seconds, I think. I'll probably go more into it tomorrow, since I could probably talk about being in the Army all day. But after that, I went to be a recruiter in California, from where I'm from. Well, not right from where I'm from, but down the hill, as we say, in the Rancho Cucamonga, San Bernardino area, or Chino, if you know where that's at. And that was my whole stint. I got out there after we had a kid because I didn't want to deploy anymore, because I knew I was going to get deployed. And actually, I was on orders to go to Korea had I stayed in. And you can bring your family to Korea, but then you have to stay for 3 years. And there's rules left or right of that, but it always changes. But yeah, it's I didn't want it. And so I was like, well, my contract's up. I'll just go ahead and get out. And well, we'll go into the rest another day. Well, tomorrow, if I do the long form again, which I think is probably okay. Now I got to figure out how to do this video. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get out and do the post plunge. Oh, getting out is the worst. Again, I talk about breaking that thermal layer, and it builds up, and I try to keep my legs open so I don't gather it there, but I always inevitably end up closing them. Oh, God. Okay, here we go. Okay. It's like I'm just stiff and everything hurts, and then the cold water hits areas and I just don't want to move. Yeah. Anyway. Again, keep doing the things that motivate you. This motivates me, getting on here, sharing what I do every day to help myself stay sane and healthy. Have a good one, folks.